don't know if you've ever heard of the term RAID, R-A-I-D. It stands for redundant something drive, I don't know, array. The concept of RAID is a bit flawed. Back in the day, back when computers were just starting out and they had very small drives and all this kind of stuff, and they realized, this whole storing data on a drive thing might catch on. Somebody sat down and figured out, these drives are little teeny tiny things. We don't want to have 48 drives, have one of them go bad, and then come back and say, well, we lost the data on that drive. So what they did is they came up with a mechanism in software that allowed you to save data on 2 drives, but it was the same data going to both drives, so it was redundant. And that's RAID 1, I think. And then they also came up at the same time with this other mechanism that allowed you to put 2 drives together, of course, and then just have them sequential, but they would look to the system like one big drive, which was RAID 0. And then somebody came up with the idea, well, we can do better than that. We could put 5 or 6 drives together and have one swappable drive and have enough redundant data on the other systems to stitch everything back together. So you would really only lose this space on 1.5 drives would have to be redundant. And that was like RAID 5 or something. If you go look up RAID, there's like a million different combinations. Now they're striping, and what striping allows you to do is you have multiple drives, and you write one piece of data to one drive, another piece of data to the second drive, another piece of data to the third drive, all related to each other. So it's one write being split up 3 times, and it improves write performance, read performance, because you can write and read to the drives faster. Well, nowadays that's even becoming a bit redundant, because redundant as in not needed anymore, because not only drives are faster, but you don't have the bottleneck of reads and writes like you used to with spinning disks. You had to worry about where the head was right now and how long it was going to take the head to get over to where it needed to go to read. Now I don't know what other people's experience is really. I know RAID is used. Well, I'm getting dripped on by the roof. I know RAID is used all over all the industries, everywhere in the world. They use RAID, and the idea of RAID and other words to basically describe the same thing. I have had nothing but fits with RAID. I've only really lost data when I've used RAID. I've had drives fail and I've lost the data on it, but typically if my data is not on demand for my personal use, so I can save it off on other mechanisms. So I don't really lose data that I didn't intend to just blow off. And these videos, for example, I don't keep these videos, the video files. I upload them to YouTube. I forget about them, go on about my life. It's not worth the trouble to me because, number one, I'm not making money off of them. Number two, I don't really go back and look at the unedited part of the video. I want to go back and look at the edited part of the video, the stuff that I actually uploaded to YouTube. As far as personal data, I have started using this thing called Evernote, and I hope they have backups and everything going on. You guys better be working on that. Keep that up. So in business, though, you have to have redundant failure detection and all this kind of stuff, and data. What is it? Regeneration. Because there's actually times where you can regenerate data. Holding against the wet fence, my coat, my shirt. Man, it just rained out here. It's been raining for a couple of days. Everything's soaked. And now I leaned against the wet gate, and I'm like, ugh, great, with a white shirt and everything. Anyway, RAID to me has always been a real pain in the neck. More stress than it's worth. And I work in the field, but there are better ways of doing it. It seems like if you look at the system that you're building, and you sit down and you design the RAID or whatever you want to call it. You design the redundancy and the mechanisms to replace drives and that sort of thing. You design it in from the beginning, hardware and software at the same time. You get so much better results. One of the worst results that I've ever gotten was trying to do a redundant raid on a system, and one drive go down and the other drive gets stressed for some reason, and then it goes down. It's like, why am I doing raid? And plus, we used to have lab machines we wouldn't really pay much attention to. It wasn't like they were really super important lab systems, so like, you know, lab as in test systems. But they would sit in there and beep and beep and beep and beep. And I think what they were doing was testing how long it would take the other drives to fail, and how the system would react on the second failure. So they just had to sit there and pound on the system until they got problems with it. And it would beep for days sometimes. They leave these things running until they failed. It was like, so okay, when are you going to pull the plug in this thing? It's driving me nuts. But you know, that's kind of off the point now. But when you just took regular hard drives, there was somebody, as I read on Slashdot, there was somebody who had, they have just gazillions of drives in their systems. It's a huge storage company, and they do, you know, public storage basically for your data. And they were doing tests on enterprise level drives and just consumer level hard drives that go into regular computers. And what they found out was, in the first 3 years of usage, the failure rate's about the same. It was about 5% across the board. And really, there was no one manufacturer that stood out. There were a few model numbers that stood out as more superior. But to be honest with you, once they make one run of those model numbers, they don't make any more. So there was really nothing you could do. You had a 5% failure rate of all spinning hard drives in the first 3 years. And that number scared the hell out of me. Like, why? Why would you do that? You know, why haven't they fixed that? And it's because they don't have to. They sell the drives. They sell the drives whether or not they fail. You know, the drive sold. So anyway, lousy experience with RAID. I don't like RAID. I don't know. Put your data on two separate systems that aren't related to each other, so that way when one fails, you have a backup. And don't get yourself tied up with keeping all that data. I don't know how the feds do it, like the NSA, and how they keep all these, just everybody's data from womb to tomb. I don't know how they do it, and I'm not sure I want to know.